My wife had just left for her sister's wedding when my 6-year-old climbed into bed and whispered, "Daddy, we need to leave now." I asked, "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Through tears she said, "Mommy changed the locks yesterday. By morning, we'd be orphans." I rushed to the doors, everyone was locked. Then I smelled gas, and the doorbell rang. You know, there are moments in life that just shatter everything you thought you knew. One minute, you're the untouchable king of your own empire. The next, you're staring down the abyss, realizing the very person you trusted most tried to burn your whole world to the ground, with your children inside. That's what happened to me, John Pierce, and believe me, it was a wake-up call I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I ran Pierce Security Solutions, the best in the Northeast, protecting the kind of people who needed protection, you know? High-stakes clients, big names. My reputation was built on two simple rules: absolute loyalty and, if you betray me, devastating retribution. I lived by it. My office overlooked Boston Harbor, rain lashing against the windows. Just another Tuesday. Then my personal line rang, the one only 3 people even knew. It was Detective Rodriguez. An incident at my kid's school. My heart just dropped. 20 minutes later, I was striding through Beacon Academy, my overcoat still wet. The principal, Wallace, was wringing his hands, mumbling apologies. "Where's my daughter?" I cut him off, my voice ice. He led me to a small room. There she was, my 6-year-old Lucy, on an exam table, her strawberry blonde hair matted with dried blood. Across from her, a boy with a broken arm, sobbing, his mother fussing over him. Wallace stammered. The other boy called Lucy names about her mother. Things got physical. "Mrs. Donnelly claims Lucy started it." My blood ran cold. I turned to Lucy. Her green eyes met mine, not a flinch. "What did he say, sweetie?" Her voice was steady, but her small fists clenched. "He said Mommy was a bad word, that she sleeps with lots of men." I told him to shut up. He pushed me. I pushed back. He cried and lied. Pride swelled in my chest. That was my girl. She had my fire, my refusal to be intimidated. I put a hand on her shoulder. "You did right." But then Mrs. Donnelly stepped forward, face flushed with indignation. "How dare you encourage this behavior? Your daughter broke my Timothy's arm." My eyes fixed on her, and she actually took a step back. "Your son," I told her, my voice low and dangerous, "will learn today that words have consequences. Consider his arm an inexpensive lesson." That evening, I got back to our brownstone in Beacon Hill. It was a fortress, 3 stories of brick and iron, custom-built with my own security systems. As I walked in, classical music drifted from the drawing room. Margaret, my wife of 12 years, sat with a glass of Pinot Grigio, her auburn hair cascading over her silk blouse. "How's Lucy?" she asked, not even turning. "She'll be fine." Handled herself like a Pierce. Margaret's lips tightened, almost imperceptibly. I heard about the incident. "Really?" I said, pouring myself a scotch. "Couldn't you have been more diplomatic with Mrs. Donnelly? Her husband sits on the school board." I looked at her, truly looked at her. "I don't care if her husband sits on the throne of England. No one speaks about my family that way." "Your family," Margaret finally turned, her blue eyes cold. "Sometimes I wonder if you remember I'm part of it too." I studied her. We'd met when she was a struggling art curator, and I was just starting Pierce Security. I'd been drawn to her sophistication, her social grace, everything I lacked from my rough South Boston upbringing. Now, 12 years and 2 kids later, I wondered if I'd mistaken calculation for charm. "Oh, I almost forgot," she said, standing. "My sister Victoria's wedding is next weekend. The family cottage in the Berkshires." Victoria Coleman, Margaret's younger sister, was marrying some investment banker I'd never met. The Colemans, they were old money, the kind that whispered, didn't shout. They never quite approved of Margaret marrying a security contractor. "Will you be able to get away from work?" she asked. "I'll try." The next week was a blur of meetings. We'd just landed a massive account, protecting the Adamy family, billionaires from African telecommunications, now living in fear of kidnapping. I threw myself into the work. Barely noticed Margaret's increased absences or her sudden interest in her appearance. Friday evening, I came home to find Margaret in our bedroom, packing an overnight bag. She wore a new dress, deep green silk I didn't recognize, hugging her figure. "You're leaving already?" I asked, checking my watch. "I thought the ceremony wasn't until tomorrow afternoon." "Victoria needs help with last-minute preparations," she said, zipping her bag with unnecessary force. "I'll take Lucy with me. You can follow tomorrow morning with William. Assuming you can tear yourself away from work." I studied her reflection in the mirror. Something felt off. The timing, her attitude, the way she avoided eye contact. But I pushed the feeling aside. Paranoia was an occupational hazard in my line of work. "Safe travels," I said, as she and Lucy left in a hired car. I spent the evening reviewing security footage from the Atomy property. Around midnight, I headed to bed, stopping to check on 12-year-old William. He was engrossed in a comic book. "Lights out in 30, champ." "Dad," he looked up. "Is Mom acting weird to you?" I paused. "How do you mean?" "I don't know, different. Like she's hiding something." From the mouths of babes, I thought. Adults are complicated sometimes. "Don't worry about it." I ruffled his hair and retired to my empty bedroom. Sleep eluded me for hours. Eventually, exhaustion claimed me. Then, just after 2 a.m., I woke up. My daughter was crawling into bed beside me. "Daddy," Lucy whispered, her small body trembling. "We need to leave now." Instantly alert, I sat up. "What's going on, sweetheart?" Tears streamed down her face. "Mommy changed the locks yesterday. She said we'd be orphans by morning." Ice flooded my veins. "Lucy, what exactly did Mommy say?" She was on the phone in her bathroom. "I heard her say, by morning, they'll all be gone." Lucy's voice broke. "She said to make sure the gas was on high and all the doors were locked." My training kicked in. I swung out of bed, moved to the door. The handle wouldn't turn. I tried the bedroom windows. Sealed shut from the outside. My master suite, designed as my safe room, had become my prison. "Stay calm, baby," I told Lucy, though my own heart pounded against my ribs. The faint smell of gas reached my nostrils. My phone lay on the nightstand. I dialed 911, but the call wouldn't connect. Signal jammer, I realized. Margaret had been thorough. Think. I moved to my dresser, retrieving the emergency toolkit hidden in a false bottom. Lock picks. Glass cutter. Portable signal booster. Tools of my trade. As I worked on the door's locking mechanism, Lucy huddled on the bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Daddy, I'm scared." "I know, sweetheart, but we're going to be okay." The lock clicked open. I eased the door wide, listening. The house was silent, except for the distant hiss of gas. I crept to William's room. The door was locked from the outside, a safety feature I'd installed myself, now turned against me. I picked it quickly and found my son sleeping soundly. "William," I shook him awake. "Emergency drill. Move." Years of training paid off. William immediately rose, alert and ready. I herded both children to the main staircase, but found it blocked by a security gate. Another of my own installations. Then the doorbell rang. I froze. At 2:30 a.m., there was only one reason for a visitor. I looked at my children. "Stay behind me." Moving to the front door's security panel, I activated the exterior camera. 2 men in dark clothing stood on my porch, their faces obscured. Through enhanced audio, I heard one speak into a radio. "Target should be neutralized. Entering now for confirmation." Understanding clicked into place. Margaret wasn't at her sister's wedding. This was an elaborate murder plot, and these men were here to ensure the job was done. My mind raced. The house's security system was designed to keep people out, not in. Margaret must have had help. Someone who knew the system, knew my routines, knew my weaknesses. "Daddy," Lucy whispered, "what do we do?" I smiled, a cold, hard smile. "We survive. And then we make them pay." I led my children to the kitchen, where I'd installed a secondary exit, a tunnel leading to the wine cellar of the neighboring abandoned building. It had been my insurance policy against exactly this kind of scenario. As we crawled through the passage, explosions rocked the house behind us. The men had triggered the gas. I shielded my children with my body, feeling the heat of the blast. We emerged in the dusty wine cellar, coughing and covered in soot. I used my backup phone to call for help, then held my children close. "Mom tried to kill us," William said, his voice hollow with shock. "Yes," I confirmed. I wouldn't lie to them. But she failed. And that was her first mistake. The Pierce brownstone burned through the night. Fire trucks and police cars lit up Beacon Hill with their strobes. I watched from across the street, my children wrapped in blankets provided by EMTs. To the world, the Pierce family had perished in a tragic accident. But I had other plans. Detective Rodriguez, the same one who'd called about Lucy's incident, approached, genuine concern on his face. "Mr. Pierce, I can't tell you how sorry I am. We thought the 911 call came from your security system about a gas leak. We weren't in time." "You received a 911 call?" I asked carefully. "Automated. Your system sent an alert about a gas leak at 2:45 a.m. Perfect. Someone had programmed my own system to create an alibi. I filed this information away. "Detective," I said quietly, "I need a favor. I need the world to think we died in that fire." Rodriguez's eyes widened. "Sir, that's... Think about it. Someone tried to murder my entire family tonight. Someone with inside knowledge of my security systems. Until I know who, my children aren't safe." The detective studied my face, then nodded. "Give me an hour." By dawn, the story was set. The Pierce family, casualties of a tragic gas leak and subsequent explosion. Bodies too badly burned for identification. A tragedy that would rock Boston's elite and the security industry. I took my children to a safe house, an apartment I'd maintained under an alias for exactly this purpose. As William and Lucy slept, exhausted from their ordeal, I began working my contacts. First call, Raymond Delgado, my head of operations, one of the few people I trusted completely. "Boss, thank God you're alive." Raymond's voice was thick with emotion. "The news, we thought. Let the world keep thinking it. Someone tried to erase us, Ray. I need you to find out who." "Where do I start?" "Margaret. Her phone records, banking movements. And find out about this sister's wedding, the Coleman family cottage. On it." My second call went to an old friend from my SY days, Tommy Russo. Now a private investigator with questionable ethics, but absolute loyalty to me. "I need you to tell someone, Tom. Margaret Pierce. She thinks she's a widow." Tommy's gravelly laugh came through the phone. "Funny thing about widows, Johnny. They tend to show their true colors pretty quick." Over the next 3 days, information trickled in. Margaret had indeed gone to the Coleman cottage, but there was no wedding. Instead, she'd met with Vincent Caldwell, a young architect I'd never heard of. Tommy's surveillance photos showed them embracing passionately. Margaret was wearing black mourning clothes. The bank records revealed something more sinister. Margaret had been siphoning money from our accounts for months, transferring it to an offshore account. But it wasn't just embezzlement. It was the oldest motive in the world, greed and a new lover. My final piece of intelligence came from my security firm's IT department. Someone had hacked the Pierce Mansion security system remotely. Not just anyone, but someone with administrative access. Only 5 people had those credentials: myself, Raymond, and 3 trusted engineers. I eliminated Raymond immediately. That left 3 possibilities. I had Stephanie Vega, my best interrogator, invite each engineer for a routine security review. Within hours, she confirmed what I suspected. Simon Burke, the youngest engineer, had been compromised. "He cracked like an egg," Stephanie reported. Some woman seduced him at a tech conference, pretended to be interested in his work, got him drunk, drugged, and turned him. Had pictures for blackmail. Description: red hair, mid-30s, professional looking. Margaret's sister, Victoria. The picture crystallized. This wasn't just about murder. It was about taking everything: the house, the children, the business, the fortune. Margaret and her lover had planned to eliminate me and take it all. But they'd made one critical error. They'd left Lucy alive to warn me. I gathered my children in the safe house living room. William and Lucy looked at me with tired eyes, asking questions I needed to answer. "Mom tried to kill us," William stated flatly. "Why?" I sat facing them, speaking with absolute honesty. Because she wanted everything I've built, and she wanted to be with another man. She chose greed and betrayal over family. What happens now? Lucy asked. I smiled coldly. Now the dead man walks. The funeral was everything Margaret could have hoped for. Boston's elite turned out to mourn the tragic loss of the Pierce family. Margaret played her part perfectly, the grieving widow in designer black, accepting condolences with quiet dignity. From a surveillance van half a block away, I watched with cold satisfaction. She'd chosen the most expensive caskets, wept convincingly as they were lowered into the ground, and delivered a eulogy that would have moved anyone who didn't know the truth. She's good, Tommy Russo commented, adjusting the camera angle. Almost had me believing her. My jaw tightened. Beside Margaret stood Vincent Caldwell, pretending to be a family friend, offering support. The man placed a hand on her shoulder with proprietary familiarity. Tom, I want to learn everything about him. Over the next 2 weeks, I built my case like a master architect. Vincent Caldwell, it turned out, was more than just a pretty face with an architecture degree from Yale. He had a history, expensive tastes, failed businesses, and a pattern of targeting wealthy, older women. Through Tommy's investigation, I learned that Vincent had met Margaret at a charity gala 6 months ago. Their affair had started immediately, passionate and reckless. Vincent had convinced Margaret that I was holding her back, that with my death, she could truly live. The insurance payout alone was $20 million. But there was an unexpected twist. The deeper I dug, the more connections I found between Vincent and the Colemans. Victoria Coleman wasn't just Margaret's sister. She was Vincent's ex-girlfriend from college. The entire family had been in on the plot. They're all dirty, Raymond reported during a secure call. Victoria married into the Coleman money, but she squandered it. They were facing bankruptcy. This was supposed to save them. My children adjusted to their new reality with remarkable resilience. I'd enrolled them in a small private school under assumed names, telling them this was temporary. They understood, in their own way, that their father was hunting. One evening, Lucy climbed into my lap as I worked at my computer. Daddy, when we catch the bad people, what happens to us? I hugged her tight. We go home, baby. We get our life back. But different, William added from across the room. At 12, he understood more than his sister. We can't go back to before. No, I agreed. But we can build something better. Margaret's true nature revealed itself in the weeks following the funeral. She moved quickly to take control of Pierce Security Solutions, presenting herself as my widow and heir. The board of directors, unaware of her true role, offered condolences and cooperation. But I had prepared for this contingency. Hidden clauses in the company bylaws required my personal approval for any ownership transfer. Margaret found herself hitting legal walls, her frustration growing. She's getting sloppy, Raymond observed during one of our daily briefings. Making mistakes. Good, I replied. The rope's almost ready. My patience paid off when Margaret made her first fatal error. Believing herself secure in her deception, she hosted a small gathering at a downtown hotel, a private memorial for me, with select friends and business associates. Vincent Caldwell attended as her date. I watched the event unfold through strategically placed cameras. Margaret laughed too freely, touched Vincent too intimately. They retired to her suite early, unaware they were being recorded. Phase 1 complete, I told Raymond. Time to let them know I'm alive. The next morning, Margaret received a package at the brownstone, now her property. Inside was a single photograph, John, William, and Lucy, very much alive, taken the previous day. No message, no threat, just proof that the dead man walked. My phone rang within the hour. A burner number, but I knew who it was. John. Margaret's voice trembled. John, is that you? Hello, Margaret, I said calmly. Her intake of breath was audible. How? Where are you? Close. Watching. Learning. I paused. Nice memorial service, by the way. Vincent seems to have gotten over his grief quickly. Silence. Then, what do you want? Justice, I replied. And believe me, you're going to beg for death before I'm done. The line went dead. Fear made them reckless. Within hours of my call, Margaret contacted Vincent, who reached out to the Colemans, who panicked and made calls of their own. My team intercepted everything. They're planning to run, Stephanie reported. Trying to access the offshore accounts, which I already emptied. I smiled grimly. Tommy shadowed them. I want to know every move. Margaret's world unraveled rapidly. The bank accounts she'd carefully hidden were frozen. Questions arose about the insurance claim. Creditors appeared, demanding payments she couldn't make. I applied pressure systematically. Anonymous tips to the IRS questioned the Colemans' finances. The SEC received information about Vincent's fraudulent business dealings. Each day brought new problems, new fears. I watched them scramble, observed their true characters emerge under pressure. Vincent turned on Margaret, blaming her for the botched assassination. Margaret lashed out at the Colemans for their incompetence. The family alliance fractured like watching rats fight over a sinking ship, as Tommy observed with satisfaction. But I wasn't satisfied with financial ruin or legal troubles. I wanted something more personal. The opportunity came when Simon Burke, the compromised engineer, contacted Margaret in desperation. She'd been paying him to stay quiet, but now the money had dried up. Simon threatened to go to the police with everything he knew. Margaret agreed to meet him at an abandoned warehouse in South Boston, a location that meant something to me. It was where my father had taught me to fight, where I'd learned that mercy was weakness. I got there first. Simon Burke arrived, nervous and alone, carrying a laptop with copies of all the incriminating evidence. He never saw me step from the shadows. The confrontation was brief but educational. Simon learned the price of betrayal firsthand. When Margaret arrived, she found Simon unconscious, tied to a chair, and me waiting. "Hello, Margaret," I said, stepping into the light. "Let's have that talk." Her perfect composure shattered. She backed away, fumbling for her phone, but I had blocked all signals. "You can't. You're dead," she stammered. "No, I'm very much alive, thanks to Lucy." My voice was ice. "She heard your plans. She warned me. My 6-year-old daughter saved us all while you tried to murder your own children." Margaret's face went white. "I never meant to hurt the children. I needed freedom, money, a new life with Vincent." I circled her like a predator. "You could have divorced me. Instead, you chose murder. Vincent said it was the only way. He said that the Colemans would help, that you'd all be rich, that no one would suspect a thing." I nodded. "I know everything, Margaret. Every detail. The offshore accounts, the security breach, the gas leak. Simon here was very helpful filling in the gaps." Margaret looked at the unconscious engineer, then back to me. "What are you going to do?" "Justice," I replied. "But not the kind the courts offer." "You want me dead?" "You'll wish I was." I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Margaret and Vincent planning the murder, discussing how to dispose of the bodies, laughing about the insurance money. "I could send this to the police," I said. "Let you rot in prison. But prison's too kind. I want you to feel what I felt when I realized my wife tried to murder our children." Margaret began to cry, but I remained unmoved. I'd seen her cry before, use tears as weapons to get her way. "Tomorrow night," I continued, "you'll go to the Beacon Hotel. Tell Vincent to meet you there. Tell the Colemans to come to a family meeting to discuss the crisis. The details will be in this envelope." I handed her a sealed package. "Be there at 9. And Margaret." She looked up, makeup streaked with tears. "If you run, if you warn them, or if you don't show up, your families will receive something far worse than this recording." The Beacon Hotel's top floor was reserved for a private dinner party. 6 people sat around a gleaming table, Margaret and Vincent, Victoria and her husband Charles Coleman, and a distinguished older couple I'd introduced as the Harringtons. They'd received my invitation, a summons disguised as a business opportunity. Each person had their own reason for attending. Margaret came out of fear, Vincent hoping to salvage his relationship with a suddenly impoverished widow. The Colemans sought any way to recover their finances. Even they didn't know why I had invited the Harringtons, wealthy socialites with mysterious connections to Pierce Security Solutions. As dessert was served, the lights dimmed. A screen descended from the ceiling. "Good evening," my voice boomed through the speakers. The conspirators jumped. Before we begin, I have a short film to share. The screen lit up with crystal-clear footage. Vincent and Victoria in college planning their first scam, Margaret siphoning money from various accounts, the Colemans discussing how to fake their business failure. Every betrayal, every lie, every cold discussion of murder, all captured in perfect detail. Margaret rose to flee, but the doors had locked. Vincent cursed and pounded on the walls. The Colemans sat in stunned silence. "I'm giving you a choice," my voice continued. Option 1. I send this footage to every news station, every police department, every business associate you've ever had. Your lives as you know them end tonight. Victoria sobbed openly. Charles Coleman aged 10 years before their eyes. Vincent turned to Margaret with hatred in his eyes. "This is your fault." Option 2. You play a game. My game. By the rules I set. The lights rose. I stepped through a door none of them had noticed, impeccably dressed, radiating cold authority. Behind me stood the Harringtons, actually senior FBI agents who'd been investigating the Colemans for years. "What kind of game?" Charles Coleman asked hoarsely. I smiled without warmth. "Musical chairs." With a twist. I produced 6 envelopes, placing one before each person. Each envelope contains a different fate. Immunity, prison time, financial ruin, or... I paused dramatically. Special arrangements for the truly deserving. You'll take turns selecting from the remaining envelopes. One of you will emerge relatively unscathed. The others, well, you've earned what's coming. "This is insane," Vincent shouted. "You can't." "Can't what?" My voice was still. "Expose your crimes? Ruin your lives like you tried to ruin mine? Watch as you destroy each other." "I absolutely can. And I will." For the next hour, they played. Each revelation in the envelopes turned them against each other. Victoria learned that Vincent was already planning to betray Margaret for another wealthy widow. Charles discovered his wife had stolen from their personal accounts. Vincent found evidence that Margaret had considered having him killed after my death. By the end, they were a pack of wolves, each willing to sacrifice the others to save themselves. Margaret and Victoria's sisterly bond evaporated. Vincent punched Charles in a desperate attempt to steal his envelope. The Colemans wept as generations of family legacy crumbled. I watched it all with satisfaction. This was justice. Not the clean, simple variety of courts and prisons, but the raw truth of betrayers destroying each other. Finally, only one envelope remained. Margaret's. With shaking hands, she opened it. Inside was a single document, divorce papers and a custody agreement granting me full rights to our children. "Your immunity from prosecution requires 3 signatures," I explained. "Yours, mine, and a judge's. You keep your freedom, Margaret, but you lose everything else. Your children will know exactly what you are. Your name will be dirt in the circles you once moved in. You'll live, but you'll wish you hadn't." As for the others, Vincent faced charges for fraud and conspiracy to commit murder. The Colemans will spend years fighting financial crimes allegations. Their privileged world has ended. I turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Simon Burke. He's already talking to the FBI. Apparently, attempted murder is a powerful motivator for cooperation. The next morning, I returned to my children at the safe house. They had watched the entire night's events on a secure video feed at my insistence. William and Lucy needed to understand the depths of betrayal and the price of justice. "Is it over?" Lucy asked. "Almost," I replied, pulling them close. "We have one more thing to do." We drove to Pierce Security Solutions headquarters. Word had spread that John Pierce was alive. Employees cheered as I walked in with my children. Raymond met us at the elevators, tears in his eyes. "Welcome home, boss." I addressed the assembled staff personally, thanking them for their loyalty during the crisis. I explained that those who'd betrayed me had been dealt with. Pierce Security would emerge stronger. Later, in my office, I found a package on my desk. Inside was Lucy's lucky rabbit, slightly singed from the fire, and a note from Detective Rodriguez. "Found this in the ruins. Thought she might want it back." That evening, I took my children to dinner at their favorite restaurant. They'd grown in these weeks, harder, wiser, but not broken. "Dad," William said over dessert, Are we safe now? I considered the question carefully. Safer than before. But remember what you've learned. Trust carefully, watch constantly, and never let your guard down. Lucy hugged her rescued rabbit close. And family protects family, she added. I smiled proudly. Exactly. The aftermath of my revenge spread like wildfire through Boston's social circles. Margaret lived in isolation, shunned by the very society she'd craved. Her daily existence became a punishment, watching her children thrive without her, seeing her former friends cross the street to avoid her, receiving photos of her ex-husband's success. Vincent Caldwell learned about survival the hard way. Federal prison awaited, but first came the street justice. My reputation meant certain people took interest in the man who tried to murder me. Vincent discovered that, even without direct action, I could make prison a nightmare. He died at 57, shanked in the prison yard. The report cited gang violence, but those who knew understood it was the final payment on a debt 20 years old. I, even from beyond the grave, had reached out one last time. The Colemans suffered differently. Victoria developed early-onset Alzheimer's, her mind crumbling like her family's fortune. In her lucid moments, she relived her betrayal of Margaret, crying for forgiveness that never came. She died in a state hospital, alone and broke, whispering warnings about the Pierce revenge. Charles Coleman lasted longer, but suffered more. The IRS investigation exposed decades of tax fraud, stripping away the family's remaining wealth. His children disowned him, and his friends abandoned him. He took his own life in a motel room, leaving only a note: John Pierce was right about justice. The Coleman name, once synonymous with Boston's elite, disappeared entirely. Their mansion was converted to condos, their businesses sold piecemeal, their legacy erased, as I had promised. They faced worse than prison. They faced the absolute destruction of everything they'd built. Simon Burke, the engineer who betrayed my security systems, lived out his sentence in terror. Every day brought new threats, mysterious accidents, and constant reminders that my reach extended even there. Upon release, he'd attempted to start fresh in California, but my network followed him. No job lasted, no relationship survived. He finally settled in a small town in Maine, living under an assumed name, jumping at shadows and checking his locks obsessively. The irony wasn't lost on him. The man who disabled my security now lived in perpetual fear of unprotected doors. Margaret's fate, perhaps, was the cruelest. After Vincent's imprisonment and her family's destruction, she lived another 13 years. Unable to face Boston society, she'd fled to Europe, changing locations whenever rumors of her identity surfaced. The photos I had arranged to be sent continued throughout her life: Lucy's graduation, William's wedding, the grandchildren she'd never meet. Each image a reminder of what she'd lost by choosing greed over family. She died in a small apartment in Prague, discovered days later by neighbors who knew her only as that sad American woman. The letter she'd written to Lucy and William, begging forgiveness, was found unsent. Lucy burned it, unread, when the Czech authorities finally tracked down her address. Detective Rodriguez lived to 95, retiring as Boston's longest-serving homicide detective. He carried the secret of my survival to his grave, occasionally visiting to discuss old cases and new threats. His grandson now worked for Pierce Security Solutions. Tommy Russo, my sturdy friend turned private investigator, operated until his death at 88. His detective agency merged with Pierce Security, and his children continued the tradition of absolute loyalty to the Pierce family. Raymond Delgado succeeded me as head of Pierce Security Solutions, running it for 20 years before passing it to William. The company expanded globally, becoming the world's premier security firm. Every employee signed my famous loyalty clause: betray a Pierce client, face consequences that make prison seem merciful. Lucy's career path surprised no one. After MIT, she joined the FBI, specializing in corporate espionage and white-collar crime. Her methods were her father's: ruthless, thorough, and creative. Criminals called her the Ice Queen, unaware she took it as a compliment. Her closure rate exceeded 90%, and stories of suspects confessing rather than face her interrogation techniques became urban legend. At 35, she'd met David Campbell, a federal prosecutor as uncompromising as she was. Their marriage merged two aggressive bloodlines, producing the twin terrors who now tugged at her coat. She'd resigned from the bureau to focus on the family business and family justice. William followed a different path, but with the same purpose. After Harvard Law, he revolutionized Pierce Security's legal department. His specialization was destroying enemies through systematic legal warfare, lawsuits, injunctions, and investigations that left targets broken and bankrupt. He married Margaret Solis, a federal judge, expanding the family's influence throughout the justice system. Together, the siblings built an empire that enforced my philosophy: loyalty is rewarded, betrayal is annihilated. 23 years after Margaret's death, Lucy Pierce Campbell stood before my grave in Mount Auburn Cemetery. The morning Boston air was crisp, carrying the scent of early spring blossoms. At 42, she was my spitting image, same intense green eyes, same uncompromising stance. Her twin sons, just 6 years old, hugged her legs, eerily reminiscent of her own childhood. "Tell us the story again, Mama," asked Nathan, the older twin by 3 minutes. "About how Grandpa made the bad people pay," added Noah. Lucy smiled, running a hand through Nathan's hair. "Later, my loves. First, we pay our respects." She placed fresh flowers on my grave. I'd lived to 92, sharp until the very end, watching over my growing dynasty of Pierces. When the heart attack finally claimed me, Lucy had been holding my hand, promising to continue my legacy. "Miss you, Dad," she whispered. "You'd be proud." The sound of approaching footsteps made her turn. William, now a distinguished 68, strode down the path. Her brother had aged gracefully, his silver hair and expensive suit speaking to his success. Beside him walked his daughter Samantha and her teenage son, the next generation of Pierces. "You're early," William said, embracing his sister. The boys wanted to hear the story. William knelt beside his nephews. "Did you know your Grandpa John was the greatest man who ever lived? Because he made the bad people sorry?" asked Noah. "Exactly," William nodded. "And he taught us that family comes first. Always." As the family gathered around my grave, Lucy's mind drifted to the others who'd played parts in my tale. Their fates had become Pierce family legend, cautionary tales passed down to each new generation. Later, at the Pierce family compound, a modernized fortress in Beacon Hill, the gathering continued. Extended family filled the house: cousins, spouses, children, and grandchildren, all bound by blood and my fierce principles. In the study, Lucy found an old file hidden behind my books. My handwriting covered the yellowed pages, a journal entry from 50 years ago. Each generation must face betrayal. Each must choose between forgiveness and justice. I chose justice. Let my children choose wisely. She smiled. They'd chosen justice. All of them. And they'd pass that choice to their own children. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Tommy Russo III entered, now 47 and head of the Private Investigation Division. "Lucy, we have a situation." She raised an eyebrow. "Betrayal. Embezzlement. One of our senior executives moving money offshore. Just like Margaret," Lucy finished, slipping naturally into command mode. "Gather the team. Full surveillance. I want everything: financials, communications, relationships. Find the weak points." Tommy nodded. "Like your father always said, the rope is strongest when they hang themselves." "And Tommy," Lucy finished, channeling my cold satisfaction, "make sure they understand this isn't just business. This is personal." Over dinner, the family discussed the situation. William offered legal strategies. Samantha suggested psychological pressure points. Even the grandchildren, those old enough to understand, contributed ideas. The Pierce family worked like a well-oiled machine, each member playing their part. Later, as Lucy tucked her sons into bed, Nathan looked up at her. "Mama, when someone betrays family, what do we do?" "We remember Grandpa John," she answered, smoothing his hair. We are patient. We gather information. And we make them pay in ways they never imagine. Noah snuggled against her. Like the story? Exactly like the story. Now sleep, my little warriors. Tomorrow, you'll learn more about justice. Alone in her study, Lucy opened her laptop and began planning. The new betrayal would be handled swiftly and completely. The executive, a man named Harrison Blake, would learn what generations before him had learned. The Pierce family never forgave, never forgot, and never failed to collect their debts. She drafted messages to her team, each instruction precise and merciless. The Ice Queen was in full effect. As she worked, she remembered my final words. They may forget who I was, but they'll never forget what I did. With a smile, cruel and determined, Lucy prepared to add another chapter to the Pierce legacy. The dead man's shadow still walked, guiding his descendants in the sacred art of vengeance. Years had passed since I left this world, but my truth remained constant. Loyalty was rewarded, betrayal was destroyed, and family came first. Always.